She stood quietly, her small hands clenched at her sides. The dust of her village rose around her as the ship landed. Valari was only 16 seasons old, but she already knew what was about to happen. Her father didn't look at her face, and her mother stayed inside their home. This was how things were done on her planet when times got hard. A daughter was traded for food, for money, or for silence. The ship's doors opened with a low hiss. 3 alien traders walked out tall, armored, and smiling without kindness. They looked Valari up and down like she was a sack of grain. The leader, a rough-scaled being named Kratak, grinned and said, "This one will sell well." Her father nodded, eyes on the metal container full of credits. Valari wanted to scream. But she had learned long ago, no one listens to a daughter here. She had no rights, no voice, no place to run. When she was 5, she saw another girl vanish this way. When she was 10, she asked her father if she would be next. He just said, "You'll bring honor to the family one day." Now that day had come, and honor felt like a curse. The credits clinked as the box was handed over. No words of goodbye, no last hug, just the cold hand of the trader on her shoulder. Valari walked into the ship without looking back. The doors closed behind her. Like the lid of a coffin, inside the smell was strange spices, metal, and fear. Other girls were already inside. Quiet, broken, some younger than her. One cried softly in a corner, whispering a name over and over. Valari sat down and stared at the wall, thinking about nothing, because thinking hurt too much. Hours passed, or maybe days, she couldn't tell, in the cold, dark cargo hold. The ship stopped at a spaceport far from her world. The girls were cleaned, dressed in soft silks, and lined up like prizes. Valari felt like she was in a dream, a bad one, the kind you can't wake up from. She stood with her head low, heart heavy, watching aliens walk by, pointing, laughing, choosing. A voice called out from the crowd, quiet but clear. How much for her? It wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise. It was a human voice, calm, deep, and different from the others. Kratak turned, confused. "Her," he said. "That one is pure, strong, still untouched, high value." The human stepped forward, dressed in worn clothes, a bag slung over his shoulder. His face was tired but kind. Eyes sharp and focused on Valari, not in hunger, but in concern. "I'll give you 1 plasma core and a medical scanner," he said. Kratak laughed. "You think this is a rescue mission?" Human. Others chuckled too, but the human didn't smile. He pulled out the core and the scanner, both rare tech items worth more than any one girl. Kratak stopped laughing, stared, then nodded slowly. "Fine, she's yours, but remember, you break her. No refunds," he said, with a grin. The human didn't answer. Just walked up to Valari and gently touched her arm. "Come on," he said softly. "You're free." Now, Valari didn't move at first. Free. What did that even mean? She followed him, numb, waiting for the trap to snap shut. But nothing happened. He led her through the crowd, through metal corridors, to a small ship parked quietly at the end of the dock. It wasn't big, but it looked clean and safe. Inside, the air was warm, the lights soft. He showed her a small room with a bed, food in the corner, and a door. "The door locks from inside," he said. "You don't have to be afraid here." Valari stood there for a long time, staring at the door. She closed it slowly, then clicked the lock, and for the first time in her life, she was the one holding the key. She curled up on the bed, hands shaking, heart unsure, but the ship was quiet, and outside the door, the human didn't move, didn't speak, didn't try anything. He just sat near the cockpit, fixing a broken panel, humming an Earth's tune she didn't know. Valari stared at the ceiling, wondering what kind of person buys someone just to set them free. She didn't understand this human, not yet, but somehow. In the silence of that small ship, Hope began to breathe again. They all stared when the human walked into the auction room. He looked out of place, like he didn't belong. He didn't have shiny armor or gold rings. His boots were dusty, his jacket old, and his eyes were tired. But when he looked at Valari, he didn't look through her like others. He looked at her. Valari stood on the small platform. Dressed in soft silks they had forced on her. The lights above made her skin glow, made her seem exotic, rare. Bidders from across the stars shouted numbers and waved cards. The air was hot, the room buzzing with greedy voices. She stood still, heart frozen, eyes dull. Waiting for the bidding to end like it always did, Craddock, the trader who sold her, grinned and lifted his hand. She's healthy, untouched, trained in obedience, good for labor or pleasure. The crowd cheered. Credits were offered in loud bursts. But then, in the quiet back row, the human raised his hand and said one word. Freedom. The crowd stopped. Laughter rippled through the room. Someone shouted, "What kind of bid is that?" Another mocked, "He thinks this is a charity house." But the human stepped forward, pulled out a small black box, opened. Inside were two rare items, one glowing plasma core, and one functioning medical scanner. Gasps filled the air. Craddock's eyes narrowed. He licked his lips. "That's worth more than the girl," he muttered. The human nodded. "Then we have a deal." Valari blinked, confused. What was happening? Was this a trick? A new kind of lie? Craddock hesitated. But greed always won with him. He grabbed the box, closed it fast, and waved his hand. "She's yours. Take her." Valari felt someone take her hand, warm, steady, not rough. The human didn't pull her, didn't force her. He just guided her gently off the platform. They walked through the crowd. As whispers followed, "Why waste tech on a slave? Humans are strange. Watch he'll break her or sell her later." But the human said nothing. He walked calmly, Valari close behind, still trying to understand. Outside, the spaceport air was colder, the lights dimmer. Valari kept looking at him. This human who bought her without touching her, he didn't talk much, just opened the ship ramp and said, "You're safe here." She walked in slowly, ready for the moment it would all fall apart. But no cage, no chain, no master's chair, just a small ship with tools, supplies, and silence. He led her to the same room again. Showed her the bed, the food dispenser, the control panel. "You can lock the door from inside," he said. Then paused. "My name is Dale," he added. "If you want anything, ask." Valari stood there, hands shaking, brain foggy. She whispered, "Why did you buy me?" Dale looked at her, quiet, then replied, "Because no one else was going to help you." She stared at him, heart twisting. He didn't ask for her name, didn't ask her to serve, didn't say what he expected. He just walked away and let her decide. That night, Valari didn't sleep. She sat on the bed, eyes on the locked door, waiting for the knock, but nothing. Came only the hum of the ship, the quiet sounds of tools from outside, and the gentle thump of her heartbeat. She opened the panel and looked at the lock again, still not believing it worked only for her. The next morning, or maybe it was the same night, Dale knocked. Once, he didn't enter, just said, "There's food outside if you're hungry." Valari cracked the door open, saw a tray with fruit, bread, and clean water. She took it in slowly, her stomach growling, but her mind still afraid. She ate in silence, each bite confusing her more. Why wasn't she being used, punished, tested? Was he waiting for something? Later, she walked into the main room. Dale was fixing a light panel, tools scattered around him. He looked up, smiled slightly. "Hey," he said simply. Valari opened her mouth, then closed it again. She sat nearby, not too close, but not far either. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then said softly, "Valari." He nodded. "Nice to meet you, Valari," just like that. No laughter, no mocking, no collar. She watched him work. Quiet hours passed. And for the first time in her life, no one told her what to do, but he made her feel like she mattered. That night, before sleeping, she unlocked the door and left it open. Just a little, just in case this was real, because maybe this strange human wasn't like the rest of the galaxy. She had never seen a door that locked from this inside, not on her world, not in the cages, not in the slave ships. There was always someone outside with a key, someone watching, waiting, but this door was hers. And it closed with a soft click that made her chest ache. Valari sat by the door, fingers touching the lock again and again. No one came. No one came. No voice ordered her out. No loud footsteps threatened her. It was just quiet, the kind of quiet that felt heavy but safe. She leaned her head against the metal wall and whispered, "Is this real, outside?" Dale worked in the cockpit. He was checking the ship's systems, making notes, humming to himself. He didn't try to open her door. Didn't peek. Didn't ask her to come out. He just gave her space, and it confused her more than any cruelty ever had. Valari's body still flinched at sudden sounds, even when the ship beeped softly or air pressure shifted. She held her breath, but slowly, hour by hour, her shoulders dropped. Her hands stopped shaking. She even looked in the mirror and didn't hate what she saw. On the third day, she opened the door wide. She stepped out, barefoot, quiet, and walked toward the cockpit. Dale noticed her but didn't speak, just smiled and nodded. He was eating something, a soft earth bread with sweet jelly. He slid the second half toward her on the small table. Valari sat down slowly, picked up the food, and took a bite. It was warm, soft, and sweeter than anything she had tasted in years. She looked up and asked, "You're not going to sell me?" Dale shook his head. "No, not even later." She asked again. "No, never." He said, "You're not a thing to sell." Tears stung her eyes. She blinked them away. She didn't want to cry in front of him, this strange human with no collar in his pocket. Instead, she asked, "Why did you help me?" He leaned back, thought for a moment, then said, "Because I saw someone who needed help. And I could." Valari frowned. "But no one ever helped me before." "That doesn't mean no one ever will," he replied. Later that day, Dale showed her the kitchen corner. He explained how to use the food dispenser, how to clean the water filter. He showed her where the emergency lockers were, where extra clothes were kept. He treated her like a guest or a partner, never like property. Valari watched him fix a panel in the back room. His hands were rough, but his movements were careful. She wanted to help, but her training was only in serving, not doing. Still, she asked, "Can I pass you that tool?" He smiled and said, "Sure." For the next hour, she passed him tools, learned their names, and asked quiet questions. He explained everything with patience, even when she didn't understand quickly. Not once did he raise his voice or call her stupid. She began to like the sound of her name when he said it. It didn't sound like a command. It sounded like care. That night, Valari sat in her room again, door open, watching stars through the small, round window. The stars were bright, quiet, far away. She wondered if her family even missed her. But then she remembered her father's face when he took the credits. No sadness, no guilt, just hunger and pride. Maybe they were glad she was gone. Maybe that was okay because now she had something else. She got up and walked into the hall where Dale was drinking water. "Can I clean something?" she asked, unsure. He raised an eyebrow. "Only if you want to." She nodded. "I want to feel useful." He handed her a cloth, pointed at the control panel. "Wipe it gently. No pressure." She cleaned in silence while he watched from nearby. After a while he said, "You don't have to do anything to stay here. You know that, right?" Valari nodded slowly. I know, but I want to learn for the first time. Someone had told her she didn't have to work, but she wanted to anyway. Not because she feared punishment, but because she finally had a choice. That night, she slept with the door unlocked again. No fear, no tears, just a soft whisper to the stars. Maybe tomorrow I can learn to fly, and somewhere in the quiet corners of her heart, a tiny light began to grow, a hope she never knew she was allowed to have. She stepped into the sunlight and froze. Valari had never seen a place like this. Green hills, glowing flowers, and soft winds filled the small moon's surface. Bird-like creatures sang in the trees, and strange blossoms glowed softly under their branches. She looked at Dale, her voice barely a whisper. This is real. He smiled and nodded, real as the stars. They had landed on a private moon Dale called Little Solace. It wasn't on many maps, and no one else visited. This place is mine, Dale said. Yes. But it's not for profit, it's for peace. Valari walked carefully through the grass. Afraid to crush anything, the air smelled sweet, like old stories and something she couldn't name. Dale watched her, then picked a purple flower and handed it to her. This one is from Earth. It's called lavender. Valari held it like it might break, her fingers trembling. Why did you bring me here? She asked. To show you something beautiful that asks nothing from you, he said. They walked for an hour, maybe more. Valari saw plants from dozens of worlds, each labeled, each cared for, a tree from Tathari, with glowing fruit. Vines from Arcoon that shimmered like water. Dale touched them gently, whispering the names like old friends. I plant something from every place I visit, he said. I call it my memory. Garden. Valari stopped at a silver-leafed bush, her eyes locked on the leaves. She had seen these before back on her world, in the wild places where only the brave girls went. My mother used to collect these when she was young, Valari whispered. Dale didn't interrupt. Didn't ask questions. She sank to her knees and touched the soil. A tear slipped down her cheek. Then another. She didn't know why she was crying, maybe because it was the first time no one told her to stop. Dale sat beside her in silence. Not too close, just near enough, she finally said. She stopped smiling after my 3rd season. That's when my father said I would belong to someone else one day. Valari picked up a fallen petal and rolled it between her fingers. I thought maybe she would stop it, but she didn't. Dale looked at the horizon, eyes calm. Sometimes people become silent when they feel powerless, he said softly. Valari's voice cracked. I hated her for it. Now I just feel hollow. He didn't try to fix it, didn't tell her she was wrong. He just let her speak. And somehow that helped. She looked up at him. What about your family? He chuckled, low and short. Gone. Long ago. She blinked. I'm sorry. He shrugged. You don't need to be. Loss is part of life, but it shouldn't be your entire life. Valari stood again and walked toward a tree with rainbow leaves. Each one looked like it had a tiny galaxy inside. She turned to him and asked, Do you come here often? Dale nodded. Whenever I start to feel like I'm not human anymore. This place reminds me why I want to be. She sat under the tree, legs crossed, head tilted. What do you mean? She asked. Dale sighed. Out there, the galaxy is cold. People trade. Lives by trust. Crush hope. If I stay out there too long, I start thinking like them. He paused, then looked at her. But helping you, bringing you here, it reminded me I still have a heart. Valari felt something shift inside her, something gentle and strange. She had been a price, a product, a name on a list. But in this garden, surrounded by stars and soft leaves, she felt like a person. She reached up and picked one of the rainbow leaves, held it close to her chest, and whispered, I want to plant something here, something that's mine. Dale's smile was soft and proud. Then let's find a spot." They walked together to a quiet corner near a small pool of clear water. Dale gave her a packet of soil and a tiny sprout. It was a rare earth, seed blue in color and slow to grow. Valari dug the hole carefully. Her hands steady now. She placed the sprout inside, pressed the soil down gently, then whispered something in her native tongue. A goodbye and a beginning when she stood up. The wind carried the sound of birds across the garden. Dale placed a small tag beside her plant. "What do you want to name it?" he asked. She thought for a moment and said, "Hope." They stood there for a long while, not speaking, not needing to. Because sometimes healing begins in silence, and sometimes all it takes is one moment of kindness to grow an entire garden of new beginnings. She was planting another seed when the alarm beeped, a slow warning tone that echoed through the peaceful ship. Valari stood up fast, wiping soil from her hands. She looked at the blinking red light on the wall and felt her chest tighten. Dale entered the room, calm but serious. "We have visitors," he said quietly. Outside, a docking signal flashed. On the screen, 3 ships hovered near the edge of the moon's orbit. Old, marked with rust and greed trader ships, the kind Valari knew too well. Dale zoomed in the camera feed, and there he was, Krato. The same alien who had sold her. Valari stepped back, her breath shaky. "Why is he here?" she whispered. Dale's eyes stayed on the screen. "He tracked you, or me, maybe both." She felt the weight of her past pressing on her chest. "They'll take me back," she said, voice cracking. Dale turned to her. "Not unless I stop breathing." She shook her head. "You don't understand. He has the papers. The deal? I was traded legally." Dale walked to a side locker and pulled out a small metal case. He opened it and showed her a new ID chip. "This says you're a crew now," he said, "not property." Valari stared at it, unsure if she should cry or laugh. "But will the council believe it?" Dale smirked. "We won't wait for the council." The ship rocked slightly as the Trader's 4 docked. Dale didn't flinch. He pressed a button and activated the shield locks on all entrances. "You stay here," he said firmly. "No matter what happens, you stay in this room." But Valari didn't nod. She looked at the door, then at him. "I don't want to hide anymore." Dale stared at her, saw the fear behind her courage. He placed a hand on her shoulder, then stay close. The outer bay opened slowly, hissing as 3 tall figures entered. Kratok stood in the center, his eyes narrow and full of false smiles. "Well, well, human herd, you've been collecting things that don't belong to you." Dale stayed calm, his voice flat. "She's not a thing, she's a person, and she's part of my crew." Kratok laughed. "Cute. But you know the law. She was purchased by us, transferred fair and clean." He tossed a paper across the floor, an old contract written in rough alien script. Valari picked it up and stared at the signature. It was her father's. Her hand shook, but her voice did not. "This contract was signed without my voice," she said. Kratok raised a brow, amused. "Daughters don't have voices where you come from." Valari stepped forward. "They do now." One of the other traders growled and took a step toward her. Dale raised a small device and pointed it at them. A hologram blinked on in the air, showing a recording. Kratok laughing, bragging about selling young girls, even trading sick ones for parts. The traders froze, eyes wide. Dale's voice was calm, deadly. "You make one move, and this goes straight to the Galactic Justice Network." Kratok's smile faded. "You wouldn't dare," he hissed. Dale leaned closer. "Try me." Valari looked between them. Heart pounding, she was shaking, but her feet stayed planted. This time, she would not run. "You lost the moment you underestimated me," she said softly. "I am not yours. I never was." Kratok stepped back, his claws twitching. But he wasn't stupid. He saw the humans' calm, the girls' fire. and the blinking light that said they were already transmitting. He turned to leave, sneering. "This isn't over." Dale replied coldly. "For you is." The traders walked out without another word. The door closed behind them. The ship? Silent once more, Valari stood still, breath shallow, legs trembling now that it was over. Dale moved beside her, quiet and strong. "You did well," he said. "I was scared," she admitted. "But you stood," he said. "That matters, later." As the ship lifted from the moon and flew back into the stars, Valari sat in the cockpit. Beside Dale, watching the darkness ahead, "I thought I was just a traded girl." She whispered. Dale turned to her and said, "You're more than that. You're free." And this time, she believed it. Even if just a little more than before, they were waiting for her answer, 3 council judges on the screen. Cold eyes blinking, Valari stood in front of the ship's main console, her heart pounding loud in her ears. Behind her, Dale waited in silence. Not speaking for her, not this time. One judge asked again, "Do you claim this identity as your own? Do you accept crew status of your own free will?" Valari looked at the blinking light on the console, then at her reflection in the glass beside her. This was the first time anyone had asked what she wanted. Not what her father wanted, not what the traders expected her. She straightened her back, raised her chin, and spoke clearly. "Yes, my name is Valari, am not property. I choose to stay. I choose freedom." The words echoed in the ship like thunder. The judges paused, exchanged looks. A moment later, a soft tone rang out, approval granted. Her ID chip was officially registered. Her status updated. She was now free, by law and by choice. Dale nodded once, proud but calm. Valari turned to him and whispered, "It's over." He shook his head slightly. "No, it's just beginning." Later that night, she sat in the garden section of the ship, where small green lights glowed along the walls. Her new ID tag sat in her hand, light blue with silver edges. Crew navigator in training, Valari, a free wind. She never thought she'd see her name written beside a title. She touched it again, like it might disappear, but it didn't. Dale entered quietly and sat nearby, drinking something warm from a metal cup. "You were strong today," he said, without looking at her. "I was shaking," she replied. He smiled. "That's what makes it strong. You still stood up." She looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. "Why didn't you speak for me?" He answered simply. "Because I wanted you to speak for you." She nodded, slowly. It was strange but nice to be treated like her voice mattered. She asked, after a pause, "What now?" Dale leaned back and said, "Now you choose. You can stay aboard, train with me, learn the stars, or I can take you anywhere you want to go." She looked down at her hands, remembering the place she came from, remembering the silent stares of her family, the heavy weight of being unwanted. "No one's waiting for me," she said softly. He didn't interrupt her, didn't try to fix the silence, she added. "But maybe someone's waiting for help like I was." Dale smiled quietly, then helped them. She looked up, surprised. "You'd let me do that?" He nodded. "Your crew, remember you have purpose now." Valari stood, full of nerves and something brighter. "I want to learn everything," she said. "Maps, engines, signals, all of it." He grinned. "Then we start tomorrow." That night, Valari didn't lock her door. She didn't even close it. She slept with the ID tag under her pillow, her fingers curled around it. She dreamed of stars and voices that listened when she spoke. The next day, training began. Dale showed her the navigation screen, how to read star lanes and calculate jumps. She made mistakes, many, but he never raised his voice. Instead, he said, "Try again." And she did, again and again. By the 3rd week, she could track a shuttle through 2 sectors and find refueling stations. She fixed her first engine valve, climbed her first relay mast. She fell once, but Dale caught her, not with hands, but with words. "You're not falling, you're flying. Just not steady yet." In quiet hours, they talked not about the past, but about the stars, about places Dale had seen. He told her of ice worlds where fire plants bloomed. She shared stories of her childhood, the cave where she used to hide and pretend she had wings. One evening, Valari stood on the viewing deck alone. The stars stretched before her, glowing trails of endless paths. She spoke out loud, voice calm. "I am Valari, and I choose this life." She smiled to herself, because for the first time in forever, the only one deciding her future was her. She stood at the ship's front viewport, stars glowing like fireflies across black velvet. Valari didn't feel small anymore, not in the way she used to. She wasn't the girl who had been sold by her own family. She wasn't cargo, or a contract, or a shadow behind someone else's words. Now, she was Valari of the free wind. And she had a voice that reached as far as she dared to speak. Dale walked in, stretching his arms after tightening the ship's core stabilizer. "You're up early," he said. Valari turned, smiling softly. "I couldn't sleep. Too excited." He raised a brow. "About today?" She nodded. First mission, it had been 3 full cycles since the council registered her as official crew. In that time, she had learned how to read star paths, monitor life signs, balance fuel weights, and even pilot through asteroid fields. Dale had let her take over in simulations, and then on short, real test flights. She had made mistakes, but never the same one twice. Now, they were heading toward a colony outpost on the edge of forgotten space. The people there had called for help, missing supply routes, sick children, no med drones left. No one else answered the distress call, but Valari had seen it and said, "We'll go." Dale didn't hesitate. "Then we go," he had said. As the free wind glided toward the planet's surface, Valari sat in the pilot seat. Hands steady on the controls, Dale sat beside her, relaxed, watching, but not guiding. "You ready?" he asked. She glanced at him, then at the blinking beacon. "Let's make it count," she replied. The landing was smooth, almost too smooth. She laughed nervously. "Did I do that right?" Dale clapped once. "You just earned your wings, kid." They stepped out onto dusty ground, dry wind brushing against their suits. The outpost was quiet too. Quiet. Valari felt her stomach tightened. "Something's wrong," she said. Dale nodded. "Stay close." Inside the largest shelter, they found them families huddled together, pale and tired. A young girl with fevered eyes looked up at Valari and whispered, "You're not a soldier." Valari knelt down, smiling gently. "No, I'm not." Someone who came to help. They opened the crates. They had brought water packs, food rations, medicine, filters, and light blankets. Valari worked with 2 mothers to treat wounds and check the children's pulses. She moved with calm hands and soft words. At one point, an old man said, "You're too kind to be from the outer systems." She smiled. "I wasn't always from the stars." That night, after the colonists had eaten and begun to sleep peacefully, Valari and Dale sat under the outpost's quiet dome. They stared at the stars above, so many of them, each one waiting. Dale said, "You did more than fly today." Valari looked at him, puzzled. "You changed something," he said. "You didn't just land here." He gave these people hope. She thought about that, her mind going back to the garden on Little Solace. The sprout she had planted was probably tall now, reaching toward artificial sun, hope planted in her heart, now blooming in others. "I want to do more," she whispered. Dale leaned back. "Then this ship's yours as much as it is mine. Wherever you point, it we go." Valari stood up, her eyes wide and sure. "I want to visit the worlds like mine where daughters are still silent. I want to show them what a voice can do." Dale smiled. "Then we chart a new course." The next morning, As the free wind rose from the colony's surface, children waved from below. Valari waved back through the glass, her heart warm. She had arrived on this ship as cargo. Now she left as captain in training, a voice for the voiceless. She entered the navigation room and looked at the star map. So many roads, so many people still waiting in the dark. She picked a point far across the galactic belt and locked the heading. She didn't ask for permission. She just said, "Let's fly." Dale leaned in beside her and whispered, "You're leading now. And I've never been more sure we'll get where we need to go." As the engines roared and the ship burst into light speed, Valari closed her eyes for just a second and smiled. Because no matter how far the stars stretched, her journey had only just begun.